The forest trembled as the enemy came closer. The growl grew louder, deeper. Like thunder rolling through stone, David stood frozen, his rifle tight in his hands, the cub pressing against his leg for protection. The tigress mother lowered her body, her claws digging into the dirt, her glowing stripes burning like fire in the darkness. She was ready to fight, ready to kill. The trees shook violently, branches snapping like dry sticks. Then it appeared, breaking into the clearing. It was huge, much larger than the tigress mother. Its body was black, armored with thick scales that glistened under the moonlight. Its jaw stretched wide, lined with long, sharp fangs dripping with saliva. Its eyes glowed red like burning coal. Every step shook the earth, sending vibrations up David's legs. The cub whimpered softly, hiding behind the human's boots. David's throat went dry, his heart beating too fast. He had seen many creatures in his travels across alien worlds. But this was different. This was not a hunter, it was a monster. The tigress mother let out a roar so powerful it made David's ears ring. The beast responded with its own roar, the sound shaking leaves from the trees. Without hesitation, the tigress mother leapt forward, her claws slashed, her teeth snapped, her glowing stripes making her look like a streak of living fire. The monster struck back, swinging its heavy tail and smashing a tree into splinters. The ground shook under their clash, the forest alive with the sound of violence. David stepped back, pulling the cub with him. He knew he was no match for either creature. But the cub clung to him, trusting him completely. David aimed his rifle at the monster. He pulled the trigger, and bright flashes of plasma fire lit up the clearing. The shots hit the beast's armored scales, burning small marks but not stopping. It turned its red eyes toward him, growling with fury. For a moment, David thought it would ignore the tigress mother and come straight for him. But the tigress attacked again, biting into its shoulder with a savage strike. The monster roared in pain and swung its claws. The tigress dodged, fast and graceful. But the sheer power of the blow knocked her to the ground. David's hands shook as he fired again. This time he aimed for the creature's eyes. The shot grazed one eye, and the beast screamed with rage. Thrashing its head, the tigress took the chance, leaping back onto its body and sinking her claws deep into its neck. The cub cried out, watching its mother fight. David grabbed the small creature and held it close, whispering words it could not understand, but his voice was steady, calm, the same voice he would use for a child in fear. The fight grew more violent, the monster thrashing against trees, breaking them apart like twigs. The tigress refused to let go, biting and clawing with savage strength. Blood sprayed across the ground, glowing faintly in the moonlight. David kept shooting, his rifle growing hot in his hands. The plasma bolts burned deeper wounds now, slowing the beast. It roared and swung its tail again, smashing the tigress against a rock. She fell to the ground, her glowing stripes dimming for a moment. David's heart stopped. The cub gave a desperate cry, leaping toward its mother. David grabbed the cub before it could run into the fight. The monster turned its red eyes back on him, its fangs dripping with blood. David aimed his rifle again, but he knew the shots would not be enough. The creature lowered its body, preparing to strike. Death was coming for him. Then the tigress moved. She rose slowly, her stripes glowing brighter than before, blazing like fire in the dark forest. Her eyes burned with fury, her fangs bared in savage determination. With a roar that split the night, she leapt higher than before. Her claws slashed across the beast's throat, tearing into the soft flesh between its armored scales. The monster screamed, thrashing wildly, blood spraying like fire. The tigress landed on its back, biting deep into its neck, refusing to let go. David fired again, this time into the open wound. The plasma bolts tore through flesh, burning the creature from inside. The monster roared, stumbled, and finally collapsed with a heavy crash that shook the earth. The ground trembled, dust and leaves flying into the air. The forest went silent again. The tigress stood over the fallen beast, Her body covered in wounds, but her eyes burning with victory. She roared one last time, the sound echoing through the alien forest like thunder. The cub cried out. With joy rushing to its mother, David dropped his rifle. His body weak with relief, for a moment he simply stood there, staring at this strange sight. A mother, her cub, and a human together against the darkness. The tigress turned her golden eyes toward him. Her gaze was heavy, sharp, and unreadable. But there was something new in it. Not suspicion, not only curiosity, but respect. She had seen him fight, seen him protect her cub, and now she regarded him not as prey, but as something more. The cub pressed against David's leg again, as if choosing him. The tigress gave a low growl, but it was not a warning, it was something else, an acknowledgement. The forest was silent. The danger passed. But David knew this was only the beginning. The tigress had tested him, and he had asterisk. But what would come next he could not yet imagine. David stood frozen in the middle of the forest clearing. The tigress mother circled him slowly, her glowing stripes shimmering like fire under the alien moon. Her cub stayed close to her, glancing back and forth between its mother and the human, who had shared food. The silence was heavy, broken only by the low growl in the tigress's throat. David's instincts screamed at him to run, yet some invisible weight kept him rooted in place. The tigress mother lowered her head, her golden eyes burning like hot coals. Her tail flicked side to side, brushing against the ground with sharp purpose. David tightened his grip on his rifle, his finger near the trigger, but he knew that even if he fired, it would not be enough. She was too fast, too strong, too clever. A single mistake could mean death. Then, to his surprise, the tigress stopped circling and simply stared. The cub made a soft sound, almost a purr, and pressed against its mother's leg. The tigress looked down at the cub, then back at David. There was no blind rage in her eyes. Instead, there was calculation, as if she were measuring him, testing whether he was an enemy or something else entirely. David slowly lowered his rifle. He spread his empty hand out, palm forward, showing he meant no harm. The tigress tilted her head, her eyes narrowing with curiosity. For a moment, the forest seemed to breathe again. The wind picked up, the trees whispered, and somewhere in the distance a strange bird called. The cub stepped forward, taking slow but confident steps toward David. Its little paws pressed into the dirt, its stripes glowing brighter with each step. It stopped in front of him and gave a small sound, a mix between a growl and a chirp. David knelt down, moving carefully, and opened his bag again. He took out another piece of his ration and placed it on the ground. The cub sniffed and devoured it quickly, just as before. The tigress mother's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, now her massive body towering over both cub and human. David's breath caught in his throat as her shadow fell over him. She lowered her face until her hot breath touched his skin. Every instinct screamed that she could kill him in one strike, but she didn't. Instead, she inhaled deeply, as if memorizing his scent. Then something unexpected happened. The tigress let out a long, low growl and stepped back. It was not a growl of anger, but of warning. She was testing him, giving him a choice. Her eyes told him one thing clearly: if he hurt the cub, she would tear him apart. But if he kept showing mercy, perhaps she would spare him. David stood again, his body shaking from the tension. The cub gave a playful sound and rubbed against his boot. The contact sent a shiver down his spine. It was not just an animal anymore. It trusted him, and that trust made the tigress mother pause. The air grew colder, somewhere deeper in the forest. Another roar echoed. It was not from her, and it was not from the cub. It was something else, something bigger. The tigress lifted her head, her ears twitching, her body stiffening at once, her lips curled into a silent snarl. The cub pressed closer to her leg, trembling. David looked toward the sound. The forest seemed darker in that direction. Branches shook, and the growl came again. This time closer. He felt his blood run cold. The tigress gave a quick look at David, as if making a decision. Her eyes no longer carried only suspicion, they now carried urgency. Without warning, she pushed the cub toward David with her massive paw. The cub stumbled, confused, and looked up at both mother and man. David's eyes widened. It was as if she was asking him to protect her child. A silent command, a test. The growl came again, closer, shaking the ground. Something huge was moving through the trees, breaking branches as it came. The tigress let out a powerful roar that echoed across the forest. Her stripes blazed with bright light as she stepped forward to meet the unseen danger. David's heart pounded in his chest. This was no longer about survival, it was about trust. He looked down at the cub, its golden eyes staring into his. Then he looked at the tigress mother, who now stood like a warrior at the edge of the clearing. For the first time, David understood. She was not only a beast, she was a guardian. And now she had given him a role in her test: protect the cub or fail. The forest roared with the sound of the approaching creature. Trees cracked, the earth shook, and shadows stretched long and sharp. David swallowed hard, clutching his rifle again. The cub pressed against his leg, trembling. The tigress mother's roar cut through the night like thunder. And then, from the darkness, the true enemy appeared. The night was silent on the alien moon. The stars above looked strange to human eyes, brighter and sharper, like silver nails hammered into the black sky. David, the lone human, walked slowly through the tall alien trees, his boots heavy on the soft ground. He was tired, his back aching, his throat dry, and his stomach almost empty. He had been separated from his team after the sudden storm that had torn through the forest. Now he was alone, carrying nothing but his survival bag and his rifle. The forest whispered with strange voices. Leaves moved though there was no wind, and shadows shifted like they had a life of their own. David knew he was not the only living creature here. Every sound reminded him that he was a stranger in this land. But humans were used to being strangers. They were used to surviving where others could not. That thought gave him a little strength as he pushed forward. Then it came, the sound. A small cry, weak and soft, like the whimper of a child. David froze, his hand gripping the rifle. The cry came again, from behind a broken log that had fallen across the clearing. Slowly, carefully, he moved closer, his heart beating hard in his chest. When he looked, he saw something that made him stop breathing for a moment. It was not a soldier, not an enemy, not even a predator. It was a cub, an alien cub. Its fur was dirty and full of dust, its stripes glowing faintly in the dark. Its golden eyes looked dull with hunger, its body shaking, ribs showing through its thin chest. The little creature looked too weak to move, too tired to stand. David stood still, his mind racing. He knew that where there was a cub, there was a mother, and if the mother returned now, she would not care that he was human. She would see him as a threat and tear him apart in seconds. But the cub whimpered again, looking at him with those weak golden eyes. It was a look no human heart could ignore. David slowly dropped to one knee. He reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of his survival ration. It was dry bread mixed with protein, not tasty, not fresh, but it was food. He placed it carefully on the ground near the cub. The cub sniffed, then crawled weakly to the food. In a few seconds, it was eating, its tiny jaws chewing fast as if it had not eaten in days. David stayed very still, watching. He felt something strange in his chest, a warmth he had not felt since leaving Earth. This was not just survival, this was kindness. The simple act of helping another life. The cub finished the food quickly, then licked the ground as if it wanted more. When it looked up at him, David saw gratitude in its glowing eyes. For a moment, man and creature shared something deeper than words. Then the cub gave a tiny growl, not of anger, but of call. It turned around and ran into the darkness between the trees. David sighed, thinking that was the end of it. He had fed the cub, saved it for one night, and now it was gone. But the forest was not finished with him yet. The ground trembled under his boots. A deep growl came from the shadows, stronger, louder. and filled with power. Branches cracked, leaves shook. The air itself seemed to freeze. David raised his rifle, his finger near the trigger, but his hands were shaking. Something was coming, something big. From the darkness she appeared, the mother. Her body was tall, powerful, covered with glowing stripes brighter than the cub's. Her golden eyes burned with fire, her teeth shining like blades. Every step she took was full of grace and danger. And next to her, standing proud, was the same cub. The little one looked at him, then at its mother, as if saying, "This is the one who helped me." David's heart raced, his throat dry. He wanted to run, but his legs would not move. The tigress mother stopped a few feet from him. Her eyes locked on him. Her breath came out in slow growls. Her tail sweeping the ground. She did not attack. Not yet. Instead, she circled him like a hunter testing her prey. Her cub stood close, never looking away from the human. Then David noticed something strange. The mother's eyes were not filled only with anger. There was curiosity there, something sharp and dangerous. She was not just a beast. She was intelligent, and her expression shifted into something that made his blood run cold. Her lips curled, not into a snarl, but into a smile. It was not human. Not natural, but it carried meaning. It was the smile of a predator who had just discovered something interesting. David felt the weight of the forest pressing on him. The silence was heavy, the air thick with tension. He knew one wrong move could end his life. But deep inside, another thought formed. This was not a random meeting. The cub had brought him to her. Now the question was simple. Had the cub brought him to safety or to his doom?